Us right now, the founder and president of Endpoint Technology Associates, Roger Kay. Roger, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Maria.
How important is this quarter for Apple? How important is the Apple report to the markets and this idea that it's all about profits in terms of the backdrop leading this market to all-time highs?
Yeah, I think that this market is going to be pretty much a cakewalk for Tim Cook. This is the low quarter of the year, so expectations are low seasonally. Everyone is aware that there's a pause where iPhone 7 sales have slowed a bit before the iPhone 8 comes out. They're even aware that the iPhone 8 may be a bit delayed because of supply constraint on the fancy OLED screens. So that gives him a lot of room to just say, well, you know, we did the best we could and things are okay. And of course, okay for them means still enormous revenues and profits. So there's nothing wrong in the soup. It's just that some of the numbers are going to come out later in the year, and so therefore this is going to be a little bit soft. It may even be below expectations, but I don't think it's going to hurt the company very much, certainly not the stock.
And Roger, what does this mean in terms of tech, the broader sector? There's been a lot of talk of tech being in a bubble. How does tech really compare in terms of valuations and otherwise versus the tech bubble? Is it really comparable, or do you think this is a different scenario?
Well, tech is sort of in its own world to some degree. You can watch the sector move independently of others quite often. I think yesterday the NASDAQ was going down while the Dow was going up, and it was mostly tech shares doing that. So it's really, there's that, but also it's important to say that, that Apple itself doesn't always move with the rest of the tech sector. So Apple is in some sense in its own zone.
Roger, one of the things I saw is that in China, in Greater China, the sales have been down, and I'm looking at a dollar that's been weakening. And would the fact that the U.S. dollar is on sale sort of be a catalyst to sort of get sales of U.S. products like Apple products and even our broad technology in general sort of back on the favored purchase list of foreign retail consumers?
Yeah, well, so I think the situation with China is pretty particular. You know, Apple has done better than a lot of American companies in China. It recently appointed a China head who knows the local territory well. It recently pulled from its app store certain messaging apps that allowed Chinese citizens to communicate in encrypted fashion with the outside world, and Apple agreed to do that. So Apple is playing nice with the government in order to keep the doors open there. But by the way, consumers are looking at, for example, very nice Android-based Chinese-made phones for a lot less money. They're looking at a very nice Samsung Galaxy 8. So they have actually choices that have been taking them away from Apple to some degree. So Apple is in a pitched battle in China. It's trying to be careful and do the right thing, but there's no guarantee that its sales are going to increase over there.
Roger, this is a big picture question about China, though. Given what we're facing here in the U.S. with North Korea, the provocations from the Hermit Kingdom, and it increasingly looks like the Trump administration is going to take a harder line on China. And I'm not talking about just secondary sanctions on banks and individual companies, but are we looking at a trade war? And how does that impact at least Apple's stock if the rhetoric coming out of Washington becomes a little more severe?
Well, that's a big question, but all right. So my sense of it is that that Donald Trump isn't actually that aware of what the Chinese, or what cards the Chinese are actually holding. The Chinese have a lot of levers they can pull against the United States if they want to. They don't really want to because bilateral trade is good for them. They're certainly enjoying it. But they have a lot of things they can do if Trump tries to threaten them in some way. And I think that he would be quite surprised by how severe they could be, because the Chinese government is, well, it may not be more unified than ours, but it looks more unified than ours. And so I have a feeling that they can pretty much run it from the top down. So if they say we're not trading with you, or we're cutting you off in some way, or we're raising tariffs or something like that, then all the American companies will have to take the hit, including Apple, of course.
Roger, we're watching an incredible stock market. We hit the 30th all-time high for the Dow Industrials yesterday, 30 all-time highs year to date. We're looking at $3 trillion in value created since the election. It's obviously a busy earnings week second busiest week for the second quarter. And we've got the July jobs report out at the end of the week. Are any of these things that we're watching going to upset what has become this stealth rally? It's expected to show that 183,000 jobs were added to the economy last month. The unemployment rate is expected to go down one tick to 4.3%. That's Thomson Reuters expectations. What's your take on the backdrop here for the stock market?
Well, everything is calm and everything is perfect, so I would say it's time to sell.
Is that right? I mean, are you really looking at this as a contrary indicator that you think everything looks rosy and now you want to be a contrarian and get out? Is that right?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, what can go better than this would be the other way of asking that. So, you know, if we're already with everything's perfect, then any little tiny perturbation, of course, could send things the other way. But also people with a lot of profit could say, all right, I'm good. I'm pushing back from the table now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the backdrop is strong. Dagan mentioned it earlier. Earnings are going to be up 11% in the second quarter, Dagan?
Right, and the expectations, even looking into next year, are still solid. You have global economies are all firing simultaneously, something we haven't seen in recent years. We have a weaker dollar. We still have lower long-term interest rates, very low long-term interest rates here in the United States. And you have pent-up capital that maybe companies will actually step up and start investing.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. The business is going to feel unleashed. They're going to put their money to work.
Right.
And that's going to create a whole other activity stream. Go ahead, Roger.
You do want to keep an eye on something that Nassim Taleb would have brought up, which is the black swan. So, you know, while everything looks great, you know, a nuclear war with North Korea would upset a lot of things. So there are things that could happen that would change the picture very rapidly, and I think those are the things you always need to be wary of.
There are things that you can't control.
Well, that's why I raised that issue. It doesn't need to take a nuclear war. It can take just like very, very tough talk on trade coming out of Washington, and even not just end of secondary sanctions, but even some trade restrictions with China that could send the market.
But what's interesting to me is the market has shrugged off all of this news, like the Scaramucci story. Every little story 2 years ago probably would have caused the market to sell off 200 points. But the market's just ignoring what I'm referring to as white noise that's coming out of the White House or coming out of Washington.
Yeah, and good reason to ignore it because you've got profits that are stellar.
Right.
And revenue growth as well.
Right,
Yep.
and volatility is at near decade lows for the past week.
Yeah.
Nothing moves this market.
Yeah.
Roger, good to see you, sir.
Lawrence,
Thanks.
I take that
final
back.
word, Roger. Go ahead.
I take that back then. It's probably going to go up forever.
We didn't say it's going to go up
We know
forever,
you're selling, though. You played that card.
But you are a seller, and hey, that's what makes the market. That's right. Roger, good to see you. Thank you so much.